Om Shruti Manaha Haraha Sarvashruti Manoharaha Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha Anyonyam Asit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha Anyonyamasit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manoharaha Anyonyamasit Sanjalpa Uttama Shloka Chetasam Kauravendra Purastrinam Sarvashruti Manohara Anyonyam among one another. Asit there were. Sanjalpaha about talking. I think there's some difference in the translation. Uttama Shloka, the Supreme, who is praised by select poetry. Chetasam, of those whose hearts are absorbed in that way. Kaurava Indra, the king of the Kurus. Pura, capital. Srinam, all the ladies. Sarva, all. Shruti, the Vedas. Manaha, Haraha, attractive to the mind. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is glorified in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. Translation with repetition. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is glorified in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Factually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literature as the Vedas, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. And in the Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, while the ladies on the tops of the houses in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Anything sung in the praise of the Lord is Shruti Mantra. There are songs of Thakura Narottama Dasa, one of the acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. But Thakura Vishwanath Chakravarti, another very learned acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the songs by Thakura Narottama Dasa to be as good as Vedic mantras. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies, who were all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord, developed the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still, whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads are sometimes indirectly directed to the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talks appear to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions. Thus ends the Transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very important verse in this chapter. Starting this, there is a series of verses in which the ladies of Hastinapura are starting to speak. So, as we saw a few verses ago, that the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace and, smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. So the Lord, who is getting ready to depart for Dwaraka, so everything is set, the Lord is about to leave. And so now the ladies of Hastinapura, now they are seeing this scene. They want to catch the glimpse of the Lord before he leaves. And we can see here that Prabhupada is actually translating the word Strinam as all the ladies. Actually, it is very interesting. It caught my attention as why Prabhupada is referring Strinam as ladies and not as women. because in other places, Prabhupada also writes Stri as women. So when I just typed and tried to look it up, there's actually a slight distinction between these two words. The word lady or ladies is said to be more polite, and it is used for someone who is of high in social status or who are more culture refined. So, whereas the word woman is used for anyone in the female body, but the word ladies has a more finer connotation. So, Prabhupada is making that distinction by using the word ladies. So, now here we can see, now sometimes we see that there is a perception that ladies are not so important, the women are not so important in Vedic literature, Hinduism does not encourage women, and so on and so forth. But it is very important to note here that the subject matter of this verse is what these ladies are doing. Now, if ladies were not at all important, why should Srimad Bhagavatam have verses where women is, what they are doing is being talked about? So, it is usually people refer to verses from Bhagavad Gita or other places where it is said, Striya, Vaishya, Tatha, Shudras. So, they are all put in one category, Papa Yoniyaha. So, usually people refer to this verse and say, oh, they are all categorized as less intelligent or not pious, and therefore there is no importance for women. Or in other place it is said, Striya Shudra Dvijabandhunam, the women, Sudras, and Dvijabandhunam, those who are born in a family of Brahmana or Kshatriya, but they do not have the qualities that are supposed to be possessed by a Brahmana or a Kshatriya. They are known as Dvijabandhunam. So they are all grouped together, and they said, Trai Shrutina Gocharam. So all of them cannot understand Trai. Trai means the Vedic literatures. So they cannot understand Vedic literatures, and therefore Vyasadeva compiled Mahabharata so that they can easily understand the essence of Vedic literature. So sometimes it is considered they are not very, very intelligent. Sometimes this topic is also brought to Srila Prabhupada as what is the understanding here. Similarly, we also see in another verse where Kunti Maharani says, Tata Paramahamsanam Muninam Amalatmanam Bhakti Yoga Vidhanartham Katham Pashyemahi Striyaha. Even there she says, oh, how can we understand you? You descend to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service to the Paramahamsas, the most advanced transcendentalists. Amalatmanam, those who can distinguish between matter and spirit. Muninam, the great philosophers. They can understand you, but what about me? I'm a woman, how can I understand? So, actually Prabhupada in those verses, on this verse of Kunti Maharani prayers, explains about the nature of women, and especially Prabhupada makes some very important points. One important point Prabhupada says is that Prabhupada gives the example of a high court judge. A high court judge is very qualified, is very respected, but does that mean that the son of a high court judge is also a high court judge? No. So it is not by birth that one is to be categorized into something. There may be a general proclivity for him to become a lawyer or a judge and so on and so forth, but that does not necessarily mean that the son of a high court judge is also a high court judge. Similarly, Prabhupada says that in general, women are Vamana Svabhava. They are very malleable. They can be, some other person can make them do some things. Their intelligence is not very strong. But when one becomes a devotee, that is not the case. So Prabhupada says, here Kunti Maharani is a great devotee, but she is presenting herself in her humility as an ordinary woman, as a less intelligent woman. But she is not. So similarly, these ladies on the roofs of Hastinapura, they are not ordinary women. They are not less intelligent. They are actually the most intelligent. As it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna ye bhaje say bada chatur. So one who actually takes to Krishna consciousness is the most intelligent. And these devotees, these ladies, are the most intelligent because they have not only taken to Krishna consciousness, but they have absorbed themselves in Krishna consciousness. And therefore it is important that we should not make some generic statements, oh, they are not intelligent, they are not this. Sometimes by externals we may think who is what. You have designations, so-and-so designations, PhD, doctor, masters, and so. And then we think they are intelligent. No. Actually, real intelligence is one who is Krishna conscious. And one who is absorbed in Krishna consciousness is actually the most fortunate and intelligent. And thus, these ladies are the most fortunate and the most intelligent. So it is important to note that Srimad Bhagavatam does not actually distinguish between anyone, but it only talks about the glories of the Supreme Lord and his devotees. So here we can see this description is provided because these ladies are great devotees of the Lord. Now, what are these ladies on the rooftops are they doing? So another important point, as we saw earlier also, you see that the women do not mix freely with men. This is Vedic culture. In modern day, there is a certain conception of equality. Everywhere there's a conception of everything should be equal and so on and so forth. But actually, Prabhupada presents what is the right understanding of the role of women and how they must be treated. If you read various lectures of Prabhupada and even in his books, Prabhupada is again and again mentioning that what is the position of women, how a woman must be protected always by father, by husband, by the son. So Vedic culture has a specific perspective towards women, and that has to be understood. Otherwise, we can misunderstand as who they are. And here, the ladies, Prabhupada is writing, Strina means all the ladies. Actually, Prabhupada is saying the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him, Sanjalpa. So actually, we can see that there is a normal tendency. Even when I was young, I would see sometimes my mother or neighboring women, they would come together in the afternoon after all the work is done and they would talk something. Or even now we can see when 3-4 Matajis, they come together, they start speaking something. So there is a tendency to speak. But the speech that is of these ladies is something very, very unique. Unlike the normal speech of women, there is something very unique about this speech. In fact, we will see in the next few verses what they are talking. Actually, there's, as we see that their talk is so more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. Now, why is that? We will see in the next few verses. But here we can see that their talking is being glorified because they were talking about the Supreme Lord, Uttama Shloka. So what we talk describes us. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita, as we know, the Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita, the second verse is Matchitta Matagata Prana Bodhayantas Parasparam. So this Prabhupada writes in that purport that this is the symptom of advanced devotees. What do they do? That Prabhupada writes, very beautiful purport, in that Prabhupada writes that pure devotees whose characteristics are mentioned here engage themselves themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So this is the characteristic of a pure devotee. What is that? They engage themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So they had no other purpose but to serve the Lord all the time. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects. So this is very, very important. Their speech is only on the transcendental subjects. As we can see, Prabhupada emphasizes this idea of speech in many different places. And in the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter, where Arjuna is asking about the qualities of a person whose consciousness is absorbed in transcendence. What are the symptoms? So there Arjuna is asking, Arjuna uvacha, Sita pragnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava. So, Sitadhi kim prabhaseta kim asita vrajeta kim. So, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? So, in this purport, Prabhupada very nicely writes that every person has a symptom. Just like a rich man, just like when we see a rich car, someone comes, we immediately think he's a rich person. And similarly, when we see one has not enough good clothes, not enough place to stay, we immediately recognize this as a poor person. But what is the symptom of a man who is in transcendental consciousness? And Prabhupada says, most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. So actually, in order to recognize any person, we should hear what they are speaking. This is a test. Their speech will reveal themselves. And Prabhupada writes, it is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. So this is the nature. Sometimes we go by external behavior, external symptoms of, someone has great followers, traveling all over the world, and looks like a very big Swami, big yogi, and so on and so forth. But the test is hearing. Hearing is the most important quality to identify what is the nature of the person. What is inside his mind, what is inside his heart, can be understood by hearing the speech. And Prabhupada writes, the immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. So this is very important. It's a person who's absorbed in Krishna consciousness. What is the immediate symptom? That they only talk about Krishna and related matters, nothing else. So if we see that there's something else is going on, that means to that degree we are not Krishna conscious. So we have to be very careful with our speech as what we are doing. And as we saw in the Machita Matagata Prana Bodhayantas Parasparam. The word Parasparam means among themselves. So as soon as devotees come, what do? They talk about the Lord. Kathayantasya mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Nityam, perpetually, continuously. It is not that for some time they speak about the Lord and the rest of the time they speak something else. No. The subject matter has to be always the Lord and the related matters, nothing else. Now, this word parasparam is very important, and even in this verse, the word that is used, anyonyam, among themselves. So as soon as devotees come, what do? Is very important to note. What are they talking about? Is this Sanjalpa? Are they talking about the Supreme Lord, or are they doing Prajalpa? Something about mundane activities, which are of no real significance. What is being talked about? That actually reveals the nature of the devotees. And it's very important to see how these ladies are talking about the Lord only. And as we also see in Srimad Bhagavatam, actually Sukadeva Goswami, he leaves the home right immediately after his birth, and he starts walking away from the home. And at that time, actually, he was naked. He was like a madman. So there is this description in Srimad Bhagavatam, as the question was raised as how was he recognized? how can one know that? So this is a nice verse which says, Katham alakshitaha paurai sampraptaha kuru jangalan unmata mukha jadavat vicharan gajasahviye. So actually, as this incident, the current verse is talking about Hastinapura. In fact, the question here is being raised, how was he, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasa, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapura, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded? So Sukadeva Goswami is walking and he enters the city of Hastinapura, and if one were to look at him, he's like naked, madman, like dumb and retarded. Can we ever recognize that a person can be like that and be given any respect? But as soon as he comes into the assembly, everyone stands up to give respect to him. So in this purport, Prabhupada writes that it was very difficult for the citizens to recognize him in his exalted position. A sage is not therefore recognized by sight but by hearing. One should approach a sadhu or a great sage not to see but to hear him. So when one goes to meet a saintly person, what is that one is supposed to do? Sometimes we go to take attendance. Oh, I am here. Please see me, I am here. Recognize me. No. We are meant to hear what are they going to say. If one is not prepared to hear the words of a sadhu, there is no profit. Hearing the words of a sadhu is so important. And we can see from the example of Srila Prabhupada that during the parikrama, he stays back to hear what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has to speak rather than go and visit a temple. This is very important. Sometimes we think we can approach the Lord directly. We don't have to hear from a sadhu. Without the guidance of a sadhu, it is not possible to understand devotional service. Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham. So one may go on reading so many texts, one can think, one can directly go and worship the Lord. No, but one needs the mercy. And by hearing the words of a sadhu, one can actually get real benefit. Sukadeva Goswami was a sadhu who could speak on the transcendental activities of the Lord. He did not satisfy the whims of ordinary citizens. He was recognized when he spoke on the subject of Bhagavatam. And he never attempted jugglery like a magician. Outwardly, he appeared to be a retarded, dumb madman, but in fact, he was a most elevated transcendental personality. So this is very important, and we can see in the life of Srila Prabhupada how all his recorded lectures, more than 4,000, 5,000 lectures, his conversations, everywhere there is only one subject matter, Krishna. So we must know, sometimes someone may come and pose themselves as very advanced, but if we hear carefully, we can recognize them as what is there in their heart. Who are they? How are they outwardly appearing, but who are they inwardly? So this is another very important aspect. Now, the next point that we can see here is that Uttama Shloka Chetasam. So this is very important. So Chetasam, of those whose hearts are absorbed in that way. So the word Chetasam, Prabhupada uses sometimes as what is inside one's mind, intelligence. And in this case, Prabhupada is saying, of those whose hearts are absorbed in that way. So what is there in the heart is a question. What is there in our minds is a very important question to note. Because there are so many things which are going us within our heart and minds. But these ladies of Hastinapura, they have something in their hearts. And what is that? Uttama Shloka Chetasam. They all are absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Their absorption is something else. So there can be various kinds of Chetasam. Prahlad Maharaj says, Vimukha Chetasam. One who is not conscious or is not absorbed in the Lord, but rather he is absorbed in material activities. So one who is not absorbed in the thought of the Lord and his service has to be absorbed with something else. And what is that absorption usually people have? Material sense gratification. And in order to fulfill this material sense gratification, one has to make big plans, big endeavors. Lot of difficulty one has to take. That is how one's life is going away. And therefore, this process of bhakti yoga is to transform our absorption from material things to the spiritual subject matter. So, it is very, very important that everyone must notice, what am I absorbed in? What absorption is driving my life? As soon as we absorb ourselves in spiritual life, we experience a newer and newer life, which is so nice that as we engage in Uttama Shloka Chetasam, symptom will be that we will develop distaste for Vimukha Chetasam. The taste of Krishna consciousness is so nice that naturally our taste for other things in material life will vanquish. Our ambitions, our desires, our plans, they will all change. If we are not changing, that means our consciousness, our Chetasam, is not absorbed in the right place. And Uttama Shloka means one who is the Supreme Lord, who is glorified by choicest words, by the best poetry. Prabhupada says, in the fine scholarly language, with perfect grammar and metaphor and so on and so forth. So we can see great devotees in Bhagavatam and even in Brahma Samhita. Lord Brahma is offering great prayers. These are transcendental words. So actually devotees are completely absorbed in the thought of the Supreme Lord. That is very important. And it doesn't matter whether one is a Shudra, born as a Shudra, women, whether one is a Dvijabandhu, if somewhere or other, if even a dog eater, if somewhere or other, if one absorbs one's consciousness in the thought of the Supreme Lord, then that person is considered to actually attain the perfection of life. And we can see in the lives of gopis, they are considered to be the highest amongst all the devotees because they are always absorbed in the thought of the Lord. Just like Yashoda Maya, she is churning butter, but she is remembering the various pastimes of the Lord by singing some poetry, by singing some songs. So the members, the residents of Vrindavan, they are constantly absorbed in the thought of Krishna. The whole process of Krishna consciousness is to eventually absorb in the thought of Krishna. Now, all our knowledge is meant to result into this. More advanced in knowledge means more absorbed in the thought of Krishna. Just like Rasaham Apsu Kaunteya. Just like I'm the taste of water. So as soon as one is drinking water, one who is in knowledge remembers, oh, this is the Lord. Similarly, Bhumi Rapo Anulo Vayur Kham Mano Buddhir Evacha. All this material energy, advanced devotee, he does not see any of these things, but actually sees the Lord. Stavara Jangama Dekhe, Na Dekhe Tara Murti. So when an advanced devotee is seeing, he is seeing everything in relationship to the Supreme Lord. Not even for a moment, he is not seeing the Supreme Lord. That is the kind of devotional service that Acharyas are giving us. Not for a moment that we become devotees and then we do something else. No. The science is meant to engage us 24 hours in the service of the Lord. Man mana bhava bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru. How to always remember the Lord. How is that possible? So Prabhupada tells that only when we have developed that love, premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena, santa sadaiva, always, when one develops that love in the heart, then one can always think of the Lord, one can always see the Lord. Prabhupada gives even an example of even if a boy and a girl, they love each other, then they are constantly thinking about each other. So the driving force to remember or to be absorbed, the prime thing that is required is love. Right now, the love is transformed into lust, everything for me, either in the gross material sense or in a subtle sense of name, fame, power. We are absorbed in trying to acquire these things. So unless we don't give up these things, there is no way to obtain the another thing. That is love for Krishna. So we must be willing to sacrifice. So in devotional life, there are do's and don'ts. So anything that is favorable must be accepted, and anything that is unfavorable must be rejected. And as we accept unfavorable things, trying to acquire some material name, fame, power, or even gross material sense things, then our taste for Krishna consciousness will not evoke. So, bhoga aishwarya prasaktanam. So, if we are interested in bhoga and aishwarya to enjoy, then we cannot experience this chetasam of being fixed in the thought of the Supreme Lord. So, it is very important that Prabhupada mentions again and again in various places that one does not require great scholarship, one does not require some expertise in language, Sanskrit, some this thing, that thing. Nothing is required. Actually, it is very simple. And in this example, Prabhupada also, this simple story that Prabhupada narrates of this Brahmana in South India. So he was in Ranganatha temple, outside Ranganatha temple, and he was reading Bhagavad Gita. And he was an illiterate. He does not know how to read. And therefore he is holding the book upside down. He doesn't even know that this is up or down. And he's trying to read. Now, why is he trying to read? Because his spiritual master told that you should read every day 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So he's trying to read. But he doesn't understand a single word. And people are making fun of him, laughing at him. What are you doing? But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw him, he asked, what are you reading? And he said, sir, I'm reading Bhagavad Gita. I'm trying to read Bhagavad Gita, but I'm illiterate. So my Guru Maharaj said that you must read 18 chapters daily. So I have no knowledge. I cannot read. Still Guru Maharaj said, so I'm just trying to carry out his order and opening the pages, and that's all. I do not know how to read it. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also noticed that he was crying sometimes. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I see that you're crying sometimes. Why is that? Then he says, yes, I'm crying. How are you? Then Mahaprabhu said, how are you crying if you cannot read? When I take this Bhagavad Gita, I see one picture, that Krishna is so kind that he has taken the chariot driver, Sarathi, of Arjuna. He is his devotee. So Sri Krishna is so kind that he can accept the position of a servant because Arjuna was ordering, keep my chariot here, and Krishna was serving him. So Krishna is so kind. So when I see this picture, within my mind, I am crying. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could see that, he has actually understood the position of Krishna. And he's absorbed with love in the thought of Krishna that, oh, my Supreme Lord, he has become a servant of his devotee, and he's serving. How compassionate, how loving is my Lord. So this Brahmana is absorbed in that. He may not be doing, by material standards we may see, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your times? Why are you wasting your time? Don't you have something else to do? How ineffective you are. You don't know yet you're trying to do. So, because he was a lover of Krishna, it doesn't matter he could read these shlokas or not, but he was absorbed in love of Krishna, and he was seeing Krishna was sitting there, and he was driving the chariot of Arjuna. That is required, not that education. So sometimes we try to do so many different things, but we must recognize what is that we are aiming at. Atha pumbe dhuja shrestha varnashma vibhagasa. So anustrisasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. When we are trying to do so many things, we should remember what is the end. Samsiddhir haritoshanam. Are we pleasing the Supreme Lord? And in this case, this Brahmana, simply by carrying out the orders of the spiritual master, he could actually please the Supreme Lord. So, samsiddhir haritoshanam. So, in all our activities, it's very important to see, am I trying to please the Supreme Lord? And the easiest way is by pleasing the spiritual master, by carrying out the orders of the spiritual master. So, it is in that way, when we carry out the orders of the spiritual master, gradually the process of purification happens. And as the purification happens, our absorption in the thought of the Lord will increase. So this is very important, that carrying out the order of the spiritual master actually helps us to make quick progress, to recognize what pleases the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, even in devotional service, we are not aiming for samsiddhir haritoshanam. We are not trying to please the Supreme Lord. There is an element of pleasing oneself. So if that transformation happens, that if our consciousness shifts from trying to do things which pleases oneself, but instead of that, if one somehow or the other quickly transforms one's thinking, oh, what will please my spiritual master? What will please devotees? What will please the Supreme Lord? If one begins to think in this direction, one's consciousness will immediately change. And this is very important. If one functions in right consciousness in spiritual life, it is so enlivening. As Prabhupada says, one can go on serving, one will never feel tired. One will feel more and more enthusiastic. When will that happen? When we are doing it in right consciousness. If you are not doing it in right consciousness, then we'll feel lethargy, tiredness. And so it's very important that we should recognize what are we aiming to do in devotional life. And in the purport, Prabhupada also brings various points. And one last important thing is Sarva Shruti Manoharaha. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. So the subject matter that is being discussed here, Prabhupada writes that the language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies who were all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord developed the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. Actually, it is a fact. If one is actually rendering transcendental service, devotional service to the Supreme Lord, all the Vedic wisdom will be revealed in the heart. Tesham satata yuktanam vajatam pritipurvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam. The Lord actually reveals everything in the heart. There is no need to specially endeavor to become some Sanskrit scholar or some, go here and there. Actually, all the purports of the Vedic knowledge will be revealed in the heart. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru. Tasyeta kathita hi artha prakashantehi mahatmanaha. If one has implicit faith in the spiritual master as much as one has faith in the Supreme Lord, then all the imports of the Vedic literature are revealed in the heart. So this is very important principle. So complete faith in the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord, and if one renders devotional service, then all knowledge that is required will come. Just like sometimes we go to different temples, and we can see in Jaipur or Vrindavan, we'll see women gather together and chanting the glories of the Lord, maybe in a local language, in different ways. But even we may look like they're not very advanced like us, to be wearing devotee dress and so on and so forth. But because they are doing devotional service, all that is required for them to know about the Lord and the loving relationship, how to establish, will be revealed in their heart. So here these ladies were fully absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord, and therefore all the Vedic wisdom was revealed to them by the grace of the Lord. And therefore such ladies, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. So actually, if in one's heart, if one's consciousness is deeply absorbed in the thought of the Lord, in another place, Narada Muni is also referred to as Bhagavan. And Prabhupada says why Narada Muni is being referred to as Bhagavan. The word Bhagavan, as we know in Bhagavad Gita, and again places Prabhupada says, Bhagavan means one who possesses all the 6 opulences in full. Now, but how can Narada Muni be called as Bhagavan? So Prabhupada explains, Narada Muni is considered is being referred to as Bhagavan because he has the Lord in his heart. He is always thinking about the Lord. His consciousness is always filled with the Lord, and therefore he is being referred to as Bhagavan. So basically, the point is, if we hear from devotees, especially Srila Prabhupada, in his heart there is only Krishna, there is no other subject matter. He is always deeply absorbed in love of Krishna. Then those words are very, very powerful to dispel the Vimukha Chaitasam. And Prabhupada is further classifying that sometimes in Upanishads and Vedas, the Lord is indirectly glorified, indirectly addressed. But in this case, these ladies whose hearts are filled with love and devotion, their speech is much more glorious and pleasing. Because direct glorification of the Lord is very, very nectarian. And that's why Srimad Bhagavatam is Nigama Kalpataror Kalitam Phalam Sukhamukhad Amrita. Why is it Amrita? Because it is only talking about the Supreme Lord and His glories. And furthermore, when it is coming out from the mouth of a pure devotee, Sukadeva Goswami Srila Prabhupada, it becomes even more nectarian. So these devotees are like that, and therefore whatever they are speaking is nectarian. And Prabhupada is also giving an example of Narottama Das Thakur, as he has written so many Vaishnava songs we sing every day. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is approving these songs of Thakur Narottama Dasa to be as good as Vedic mantras. And this is so because of the subject matter. Because they have assimilated all the conclusions of the Vedic knowledge in their hearts, and now they are presenting in a very simple language. A simple Bengali language, not complicated Sanskrit maybe, and so on and so forth. But because the subject matter is same as what the ultimate goal of the Vedic literature is, to understand Krishna and his activities, and that comes even in a simple subject matter, in a simple language, because the subject matter is the same, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, they are as good as Vedic mantras. So in this way, we have to understand from the talks of these great devotees as how they are so much absorbed in the thought of the Lord, and how by hearing from Srila Prabhupada, actually we can also develop such consciousness and following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.